Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Asheville Vedic Astrology YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ryan's Vedic Astrology. Today, in this video, we're going to be able to hear and see an hour-long presentation on the intricacies of understanding the Navamsha. This presentation was created by Suzanne, who is an astrological apprenticeship student who's completed all of the training through Asheville Vedic Astrology's apprenticeship program. And at the end of the actual coursework, students need to, in order to complete the whole program, they have to write 3 10,000-word papers over the course of about 9 months. They need to create and submit 3 one-hour-long videos on the topic of their choice related to what we've covered in the 9 or so extensive astrology classes. And they also need to do donation-based sessions. So we've already heard from Fiona. She explored Rahu and Ketu and how it relates to the hero's journey, astrologically speaking. We've heard from Fernando. He spoke upon the nakshatras and how the nakshatras relate to the constellations and yogataras and so on. And now we have Suzanne. And Suzanne goes into how the Navamsha explains your life path, your purpose, and potentially your marriage. She explores how each house within the Navamsha, what that means for you. Also, how each planet within the Navamsha functions. What role does each planet play within the Navamsha? She also touches upon Lajatati Avashtas and some other interesting information. So she gave a wonderful presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. This is Suzanne, one of the astrological apprenticeship students, presenting on the intricacies of the Navamsha.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Balka, and I'm an astrological apprenticeship student of Asheville Vedic Astrology and the Astrological Apprenticeship Program. And I'm here today to speak to you about a very important divisional chart, and that is called the D9 or the Navamsha chart. And so today we're going to take a deep dive and consider and understand what the Navamsha chart is and the significance of this very important Varga chart. So join me today on a wonderful and informative journey. So let's talk about what is the Navamsha chart and the indications on the Navamsha chart. You know, if the Rashi chart were to be compared to a tree, then the Navamsha chart would be considered the fruits of that tree. And the Rashi and the Navamsha are really considered to be equal in importance. So the Navamsha chart is a very important chart equal to the Rashi. It really relates to one's dharmic path and gives a person their sense of purpose and direction in life. So how do we figure out the Navamsha chart? Well, when we look at the Rashi chart, we see that there are 12 signs in the Rashi chart, and each sign is 30 degrees. And so what we would do is we would take that Rashi sign and divide it into 9 parts, which equal 3 degrees and 20 minutes. And wherever the planet falls within that Navamsha would determine its placement within the D9 chart. So the Navamsha chart is traditionally used to judge marital relationships. And it also has a strong connection to ninth house affairs, and it's an important ninth house affairs, and it's important indications for our spiritual purpose and our future direction in life. So, and it's also very useful for understanding the underlying strength or weakness of the planets in the Rashi chart, either reinforcing or undermining the potentials of the birth chart. So the Navamsha chart is related to marriage, and it's that which we, as a person, feel devoted or committed to, either that being another person or to a path that we feel committed to. What is the purpose of the Navamsha chart? So it relates to that which we hold near and dear, and those beliefs that we're willing to support and follow. It shows more clearly if we will be fulfilled on our path. If the Navamsha is well situated, a person will feel that they are in their right place of life. If it is not well situated, then a person can feel that they are forced into a marriage or onto a path that they do not believe in. The most important planet in the Navamsha is Venus. And when we consider Venus, Venus is that which makes life worth living. You know, it brings a sense of purpose to things, and it's trying to find meaning out of the things that happen to us. You know, when we have a good Venus, we're able to find meaning everywhere. You know, Venus would be the comforter and makes a person feel better. And, you know, with this meaning, we can find purpose and peace with some of the suffering that happens to us in life. So we can oftentimes be able to stay the course more effectively and be committed to our path despite the challenges, the highs and lows that present itself on that path. And so if a person has a good Venus, they will be able to find meaning in everything. A person with a difficult Venus will question, you know, why they stay in a marriage or on a path, you know, and whatever it is that they are committed to. And the most important houses in the Navamsha are the 9th house and the 3rd house. And, you know, another thing to speak to here with the Navamsha is that the fact that the Navamsha chart, there's a lot of a misconception that the Navamsha chart you know, only plays a role after midlife, this sort of thing. But the truth is that the Navamsha is applicable from birth, you know, and so it's always playing a role in our life. However, we might not really feel the impacts of the Navamsha on our life until after perhaps our second nodal return. So also it's important to note that the Rashi chart is rooted in time and space, and it has everything to do with our physical self and the material and tangible events that occur in life. And the D9, however, speaks to the D9, or the Navamsha, speaks to our inner self, which has everything to do with our emotional, spiritual, or psychological self. And so the Navamsha chart is not rooted in time and space. It is a chart that is based off the Rashi chart. And so the Navamsha chart really helps us to narrow in further on to understand a person's dharmic path, and also the person's marriage as well, whatever they commit themselves to. And you know, it's important to note that the Navamsha chart can never contradict the Rashi chart. It only further describes what's already present in the Rashi chart. So it can never contradict the Rashi chart. The Navamsha, again, is not rooted in time and space. It is based off the main Rashi chart, which is rooted in time and space. You know, it's also important to note that with the Navamsha chart, you know, it's true that we might grow into the Navamsha chart because, you know, in our earlier part of life, we're really kind of trying to figure out how to get along in the world, how to survive in the world. And we're very much more materialistic and trying to kind of meet our survival needs. And that is, you know, having a place, shelter overhead, having the job, having those physical things within our life, setting up our life. And so we're more, the soul's journey is more focused on those things in our earlier part of life. And so through that journey, then we start to understand, as we settle in and we meet some of those ego needs, then we can reflect within, and we can, I think that's when the Navamsha chart can start to come into play further. As we grow in our consciousness, we're able to grow into the Navamsha, and we're able to see the impact of the Navamsha on our life as well. And it's through those choices that lead to higher fulfillment, which helps us to bring the Navamsha chart into fruition, and helps it to come alive. We could say that the Rashi chart is kind of our perspective on the journey as we start out in life. And the Navamsha chart is kind of a different perspective of that path. It's more of the wisdom we grow into, the knowledge and understanding that we grow to as we proceed on our path and we look back at our life. We see things differently than when we first started out. So the Rashi and the Navamsha are kind of really very much go hand in hand with each other. So this is some more understanding of the purpose of the Navamsha, and as we set forth on our life, we make those choices that really kind of narrow in our path and narrow in what we decide to focus in on, and the path we choose to take. So that's more of the Navamsha, and it's something that is true that we can grow into, though it is applicable from it's applicable from birth. So let's talk about some of the house indications in the Navamsha chart. When we consider the first house speaks to the general qualities other people notice about the native's marriage or life path, and the qualities inherent in the expression of the marriage or the life path, the joys and sorrows of that path. The second house is one's ability to meet responsibilities in the marriage or on the path, how the native approaches meeting one's responsibilities. The third house is our ability to do what is logical and most productive to support the marriage and or the life path, the community our marriage or life path participates in. The fourth house is the happiness the life path can provide, how the native feels about the path, the emotional home or stability the marriage or path provides. The fifth house is our ability to successfully manage the life path or the marriage, the ability to make positive changes and learn and grow within one's path or marriage, what the marriage or path can creatively produce in the world. And the sixth house is that which causes enmity, delays, or lack within the marriage or the path, the kinds of doubts that threaten to derail one's chosen path. The seventh house is the sexual content of the marriage, the wife or the husband, the give and take of the relationship, other people walking the path with us. The eighth house is the weakness of the path or the relationship, the battles that occur, partner's wealth, transformation, our karmic inheritance from joining the relationship or path. The ninth house is the grace and fortune generated through marriage or the path. It represents the fulfillment of the path or the marriage. It represents the marriage or path with indications similar to the first house. The 10th house is how the path of the marriage impacts the world. It is the activation point of the Navamsha. Planets influencing this house strongly color the Navamsha with their natural indications. The 11th house is what we gain from the marriage or walking the path, our hopes and desires, the sacrifices made for success. And the 12th house is the expenses and loss that's created through walking the path, the management of the loss, the end of the path or the marriage, the results of our struggles on the path. Let's speak to some general qualities, planetary qualities within the Navamsha. We understand that the sun is how much, in the D9 chart that is, shows how much duty and sacrifice the person will bring to their life path or to their marriage. It's how consistent will the person be on their path or in their marriage. So the Karaka ship here is consistency, status, authority, ability to manage things intelligently. The moon is how adaptable we can be within the marriage or on our path. It's how well emotionally open and receiving we are to the changes and the compromise that we might experience. How emotionally open and receiving are we to those things? And it is our sense of self, it's our adaptability, it's our ability to nurture and our popularity. Mars, Mars is what is knowing what is worth fighting for and standing up for um, those things that are important to us related to our marriage or to our path. It's our ability to be logical and to know what is correct, instinct, right and wrong, proper judgment, ability to take initiative and action. It is a very important planet in the Navamsha. And Mercury is our capacity to communicate our needs and to understand our partner's needs within the marriage. It's how well we also manage our life so that we can have a great marriage and have a great dharmic path. And it's enjoyment through games, friendliness, ability to relate, ability to get the best deal, ability to communicate, ability to manage and organize efficiently and effectively. So Jupiter is our capacity to see the bigger picture on our life path, having optimism related to one's future on the life path. And it also deals with our capacity to be forgiving appropriately, which is important in marriage. You know, you have to be able to forgive the partner when mistakes are made or when things happen, because, you know, ups and downs, highs and lows will happen on the path or in the marriage. So Jupiter is seeing the bigger picture. It's fulfillment from understanding the greater scheme of things, wisdom, counsel, philosophy, beliefs, husband in the woman's chart, wealth, creativity, children. It's a very important planet in the Navamsha. It represents the husband for a woman's chart, as noted there. Venus represents our capacity to enjoy the comforts of being in the marriage or on the life path. It's the capacity to make choices that lead to higher fulfillment. So it's our decision-making ability, fulfillment from doing the right thing. It's the wife in a man's chart, adaptability, comfort, diplomacy, fairness. So it's also a very important planet in the Navamsha. And Saturn represents suffering, debt, delays, ability to work hard, ability to stay focused, ability to do what needs to be done for success, our survival, our endurance. Saturn is our capacity to bear the hardships in the marriage or on the life path. You know, if a person has a weak Saturn, they'll want to quit the marriage when challenges present themselves and leave the marriage. Whereas a person with a good solid Saturn, they will be able to endure the hardships, the ups and downs in the marriage and stay the course. You know, a good Saturn is very important in the Navamsha because, you know, marriage to one person is a lifelong commitment. And, you know, and so marriage is a long-term committed relationship. And Saturn is a very slow-moving planet. It's the slowest in our solar system, and it has everything to do with longevity and our capacity to endure and stay the course for the longer term. And if a person has a weak Saturn or a Saturn that's debilitated, they will struggle with staying the course for the long haul in the marriage. They will struggle with their capacity to endure the struggles that take place in the marriage or on the path. And so Saturn is also a very important planet in the Navamsha. Rahu speaks to confusion, where we have little experience and knowledge, that which we are trying to develop, innovation, poisons, manipulation, and lies. And Ketu represents liberation, our innate talents and skills, bacteria, that which we are being liberated from, endings, criticalness, obsessions, and intense focus. So let's discuss dignity of planets in the Navamsha. The dignity of a planet shows the quality of effects the planet will give. Planets in good dignity indicate the planet working in a more harmonious way, a way most people would appreciate. Planets in bad dignity can indicate difficult karma, which most people would rather avoid. But we also want to consider logitati avashtas in addition to planetary dignity. You know, sometimes we can have a planet in bad dignity getting a lot of help from its friends, or we can have a planet in good dignity getting hurt by its enemies very strongly. And so planetary influences are not black and white and are subject to other modifications that need to be taken into consideration. So I'm going to share a chart with you today. And we're going to look here at the chart of Norma Jean Mortensen, aka Marilyn Monroe. She was born in Los Angeles on June 1st, 1926 at 9:30 a.m. And we can see here, let's first look here at her Rashi chart. She has a Leo Lagna. She has Saturn retrograde in Scorpio. She has Ketu in Capricorn, Jupiter and Moon in Aquarius, Mars in Pisces, Venus in Aries, Mercury and Sun in Gemini, and Rahu in Cancer. We see in the Navamsha chart that, in her Navamsha chart, that she has a Cancer Lagna. She has Mercury, Rahu, and Venus in the sign of Sagittarius in her 6th house. She has Sun, Mars, and Saturn, 3 malefic planets conjunct in her 7th house in the sign of Capricorn. She has Moon in the sign of Pisces in her 9th house. And she has Ketu and Jupiter in the sign of Gemini in her 12th house. So let's consider these placements. So the first thing that we want to speak to here is the fact that she is a Cancer rising, Cancer Lagna in her Navamsha chart. And Moon is the ruler of her first house, of her ascendant. And we see here that the Moon is going into her 9th house. And the dignity of the Moon here is that it's an enemy dignity. And so let's consider here the planets that are Graha aspecting this Moon. We see that the Sun is aspecting this Moon, Mars is aspecting this Moon, Mercury is aspecting this Moon, Jupiter is aspecting this Moon, Venus is aspecting this Moon, and Saturn is aspecting this Moon. We have a strong aspectual points of Saturn, which is an enemy to the Moon, 56 hitting this Moon. We see that there's more negative points hitting this Moon than positive points. And let's also consider here the Logitati avashtas on the Moon in the Navamsha. We see that it is getting helped by the Sun to 269.3 points. We see it's getting helped by Mercury to 179.7 points. And we see it's getting helped by Jupiter to 424.9 points. So it's getting some help there. So, you know, we can analyze these things and sort of piece it together and consider what this might mean for her and her Moon. You know, with the Moon here being in enemy dignity, we might see some more of the negative indications coming about through this Moon's placement. And the Moon is our adaptability and our ability to be nurturing and to be emotionally sort of adaptable and receptive. So perhaps this Moon's capacity to do those things does get hampered a little bit, you know. So, and it's related to 9th house things, which 9th house has everything to do with one's sense of fulfillment on their path, the grace and ease on that path, and the fulfillment on that path. And so perhaps there will be struggles with fulfillment that can lead to issues around the sorrows and joys on her path, her self-expression on the path related to first house things. It's the general qualities other people might notice about the native and about the native's marriage as well. So perhaps there might be a negative influence here with this moon in enemy dignity. So there might be some, sorrows on the path that affect the general qualities other people notice, and it being in the ninth house, which is the grace and fortune generated through marriage or on the path, and the fulfillment on the path of the marriage. So we could say that this is true. I know her first marriage that she had, she actually got into that marriage out of self-preservation. She got in that marriage to avoid entering into having to go back to an orphanage. So perhaps she did not enter that marriage out of a sense of love or this sort of thing. She married out of self-preservation. She married out of escaping a harsher reality. She married to escape a difficult childhood. Though that marriage, she was not content. She ended up leaving that marriage because she was bored, essentially, and knew that she was destined for other greater things in her life. So, and that infected her image, how people saw her. I think especially back in her day and age, marriage was something that you did not divorce from so easily. Um, so it was something back in her day and age that divorces didn't happen as much as they do now. So for the fact that she went through 3 marriages and divorces was probably unprecedented for that time, and this probably influenced how other people saw her, and perhaps in a negative light, because divorce was very much frowned upon. So her capacity to not be very adaptable, and the difficulties she might have had with her fulfillment on her path or in her marriage affected her self-image and how other people saw her. And we could see some of the more negative indications might be playing out here due to this moon in enemy dignity, and the fact that this moon is getting more negative aspectual points from other planets, more so than positive. Though we do see that the moon is getting helped by the sun. The sun is shining its rays on the moon, and the moon is reflecting that back, which could be helping this moon. Mercury can be helping this moon, and Jupiter can be helping this moon as well. So those are things to consider. Let's look here at Jupiter, which is which rules the ninth house, and it's going into the 12th house. It also rules the 6th house. So we have the 6th house lord and the 9th house lord going into the 12th house. And so what could this mean? 6th house is related to enmity, is related to challenge, and it's related to sort of some of competition. It could relate to the everyday hard work that it needs to take place in a marriage for it to survive. It speaks to the 6th house can speak to the delays and the lack within the marriage, and sort of some of the doubts that can threaten to derail a person from their chosen path, from their marriage. So we see here that the ruler here of the 6th house and the 9th house being, again, are our fulfillment on the path, the grace and the ease and the fortune that is generated through marriage or on the path, that and represents the fulfillment. We could see here that it's in the 12th house. So, and Jupiter here is in great enemy dignity. So we can kind of tie this in together, seeing here that Jupiter gets aspected by the sun, Graha aspected by the sun, by the moon to 25 points, to Mars by 5 points, Mercury by 60 points, Venus by 25 points, and Saturn by 12 points. And we see here that this Jupiter is being Rashi aspected by Sagittarius and by Pisces, is also Rashi aspecting this house here. So Mercury, Venus, the moon, Rashi aspecting this Jupiter. And we see with this Jupiter here that there's actually greater aspectual points coming from positive, helpful planets versus negative, hurtful planets. So it's getting more help than hurt, though this Jupiter is in great enemy dignity, and also the Jupiter has Mercury hurting it by 452.4 points and Venus hurting it to 7.4 points. But it is getting helped by the sun and the moon by 228.8 points from the sun, and also from the moon to 405.7 points. So this Jupiter is getting some help and some hurt. We could see that perhaps this is kind of a mixed bag, and this can play out in all kinds of different ways. You know, Jupiter getting a lot more help here with 85 aspectual positive points. But overall here, we can see that Jupiter is in a difficult house placement in the 12th house, and it's in great enemy dignity. So how can we tie this in together? What can we synthesize from this data? You know, we could say that due to doubts on the path or in the marriage, and due to enmity and difficulty and arguments and fighting and competition and this sort of thing, and maybe difficulties with fulfillment on the path or in the marriage, that it can result in loss or expenditures on the path or in the marriage, or even the ending of a marriage, you know, with this Jupiter in the 12th house. And like we understand with Marilyn, she married and divorced 3 times in the time that she was alive, and she only lived to be 36 years old. So that shows to you that she had a lot of endings, representative here of the 12th house in her Navamsha, which is, you know, all about marriage and the life path. So and then Jupiter here is with K2, and they're within 1 degree here. So it's a very tight conjunction. And K2 is really a dissolving factor. So it will dissolve the qualities of the planet it sits with. So, and it's really kind of considered the black hole of the chart. It's an area of the chart that the person will want to find fulfillment. They will want to turn towards, and it's their security blanket. It's what they know. It's you know, what they're comfortable with. But K2 will not allow the person to find satisfaction with that thing. So, and Jupiter ruling here, both the 9th house and the 6th house, you know, we could see here that this can also lead to further dissatisfaction or a sense of lack that the person feels internally related to these areas of life that this Jupiter rules over. And Jupiter is also our optimism on the path. It's one sense of bigger picture. It's the future of the life path, and it's our capacity to be forgiving appropriately. So with K2 there, it can sort of drain this Jupiter. It's sort of the sacrifices the person has to make in order to make the marriage work. So maybe having to sacrifice her sense of the bigger picture. And Jupiter also represents the husband for a woman's chart. So this Jupiter in great enemy dignity might speak to difficulties with the husband because it's conjunct K2 here, which is a malefic planet. And we can see that the ruler here of this K2, we want to consider that as well when we look at this K2. We see that the ruler here of this K2, it's in Gemini, which is Mercury. And we see that Mercury is in enemy dignity. And so we can further flavor this and understand the implications here of how this would play out for Marilyn in her life. So now we can consider moving on to Mercury. We see that Mercury here is in enemy dignity. It's in a Bala of Ashta, and we see that Mercury is getting planetarily aspected by the Moon to 25 points, Jupiter by 59 points. It's getting helped by Jupiter actually, and we could see here that we could see here with this Mercury that it's getting hurt by the Sun to 629.5 points, and it's getting hurt by the Moon to 244.5 points. And it's getting helped by Venus to 30.7 points. So let's further understand how this Sun might be hurting Mercury. You know, we can consider this through Logitati of Ashtas, how the Sun could be hurting Mercury. And, you know, I think that the Sun can intimidate Mercury, all in all. You know, a Mercury that is getting hurt by the Sun will struggle with voicing their desires, and communicating their desires can be difficult because maybe they're intimidated by their partner. They're intimidated by their marital partner, Sun being in the 7th house, which is the marital partner. And Sun is hurting this Mercury, which Mercury is our ability to communicate within the marriage, to communicate our needs. So perhaps part of the difficulty that Marilyn had within her marriages was that she had the difficulty with communicating her needs to her partner, and thus due to the Sun hurting Mercury, because the Sun can intimidate Mercury. The Sun can make this Mercury person feel stupid for asking what is needed, you know. And with these malefics in the 7th house here, Sun, Mars, Saturn, you know, this speaks to her partner being somewhat authoritative, you know, with the Sun. And she perhaps projected those qualities onto her partner as they are in the 7th house. You know, perhaps she was the victim of their abuse and of the relationship being very tumultuous. So that's how the Sun can affect this Mercury. Moon can impact this Mercury because the Moon is our individualized sense of self. It's our mind. It's our manas. You know, and the Moon is really, you know, what we identify with, what we're familiar with, what we're comfortable with, and the Moon being our individualized sense of self, who we think we are on the inside, you know, impacting Mercury, which is our communication, which is our friendships. The Moon person, the Moon can sort of make it about themselves and not about the friendship. So they can, so the Moon can hurt Mercury in this capacity. Along with Venus, you know, Moon can hurt the Venus in the same way, in that they make it about themselves. And you know, the Moon being the planet of ego, and it could be affected here because of the person's ego needs. Instead of the friendship being about the mutual relationship between two people, it becomes more about fulfilling the ego needs of the person, with the Mercury being hurt by Moon. So, but it is getting delighted by Venus, and that is helping out this Mercury. So as we synthesize all this information together, it being an enemy dignity, the fact that it is getting some help here from other planets more so than negative. It's kind of a mixed bag here. We can see that Mercury being communication, it being in the 6th house, there might be some harsh language that can cause enmity, can cause friction, can cause competition, arguments, strife, things of this nature, and that can impact, because it's the Lord here of the 12th house and of the 3rd house, so that can impact, their ability to be logical and to be productive, to support the marriage or the life path and the community or of the marriage or the life path that which one participates in. So our ability to be logical and most productive to support the marriage, the community here, this playing into the 6th house here, and it also being the 12th house, can speak to maybe some loss related to loss or sacrifices due to doubt in their ability to communicate their needs, can create some loss and challenges with the capacity to do what's logical and most productive to support the marriage or the life path. And this is how we can tie this in together. We see that Mercury is with Rahu, and it's also within a degree. So Mercury is a planet that the person really needs to learn about. They really need to understand what their Mercury is about. They need to learn about how to communicate most effectively in the marriage. They need to learn how to work through arguments and fights and competitiveness and enmity on their path or in their marriage. And that's something they really need to grow through. And whatever Rahu sits with, this is a planet under construction. This is a planet that really needs to be focused in on, to learn about, to grow through. It's something that the person doesn't have much understanding about, but they need to learn and grow, and that's part of their growth that needs to take place. We can also here consider Venus here, which is in the sign of Sagittarius in the 6th house. We can see that this Venus is in friendly dignity. This Venus rules the 4th house, and it also rules the 11th house. So this can help this house here. This being in friendly dignity can mean that the person brings a lot of peace to their competitors, to their arguments, to their enemies, So this helps a person also with being able to make choices that lead to higher fulfillment related to this house, related to the capacity to deal with those feelings of doubt that might take place on the path. So with the ruler of the 4th house and the 6th, this can really bring peace to conflicts and and also the Venus here can help the person with negotiation skills, with being able to negotiate and be fair. Those are the karaka, the indications of Venus, and it being in the 6th house, which is about competitors, which is about conflicts, dealing with enemies, dealing with difficulties and this sort of thing. So this Venus can really help out this house, and with the capacity to negotiate and to win over these battles that might happen with this Venus, it being in friendly dignity. So the person can bring a lot of peace to difficult situations. With the 11th house being gains, being everything to do with gains, titles, awards, this sort of thing. This can speak to that through through challenges related to one's competitors, that that they can dealing with perhaps the 6th house can also deal with health related issues. It could also relate health and disease. It can relate to those things on the path, enmity, our doubt, dealing with the oppressed. So perhaps there's some gains that the person might receive through those sorts of things, through 6th house indicators. They can have some gains that take place because of the placement of this Venus, and with their capacity to negotiate and be fair with their competitors. They can win over arguments and battles and have gains that come about through this. Maybe they can win legal battles and therefore receive gains from those experiences. As we tie in these houses and the dignity of this planet, Venus being in friendly dignity. And the Venus here, it's getting hurt by the moon to 166.7 points and by Saturn to 423.9 points. And Saturn, I think, can really starve Venus. And, can really hurt this Venus's capacity to to express itself appropriately, its ability to find comfort. The Saturn can show difficulties, with that capacity. This Saturn can really hurt this Venus, and make the person feel that the person doesn't deserve the fulfillment that's placed for them on the path. And the Saturn can create a lack of self-respect and can shame the person inwardly here with this Avashta when the Saturn hurts Venus. And I think that could be very applicable to that could be very applicable here to Marilyn's life, and that maybe she had some issues underneath of it all related to her self-worth and who she thought she was. And with Saturn hurting Venus, this could hurt her capacity to feel that she deserved better than what she was receiving, and can make her feel that she wasn't deserving of that fulfillment. And we do see here that this Venus overall is getting more help from the moon to 17 points. It's actually getting hurt by the moon, but it's getting aspected by the moon to 17 points and Jupiter to 51 points. So this Jupiter is really actually helping this Venus. So we move here onto the 7th house. We see that we have a very interesting combination. We have Saturn, Mars, and Sun, all malefic planets sitting in her 7th house. And wow, this is really interesting how we can look at this. If we look at here the Sun, We see that the sun is placed in a great enemy dignity. We see that the sun is aspected by Graha, aspected by the moon, by Mercury, and by Jupiter. It's getting helped by Jupiter. The sun is. Logitati of Ashtas, we see that the sun is getting helped by moon, by Mars, by Jupiter. It's getting hurt by Venus and by Saturn. And we see that Rashi aspects here, that there's no Rashi aspects from other planets taking place here. So when we combine all of these things together, we could say that, and the sun is ruler, it's a ruler of the second house in the seventh. And the sun is our sense of authority, leadership, our inspiration, our capacity to, to think things through intelligently, and, our consistency on our path or in our marriage. And it's a planet in her seventh house, so it perhaps is a planet that she projects onto her partner. It's a planet that is representative of her partner, and it rules the second house going into the seventh. So what can we say here? We can say that, and it's in great enemy dignity, that some of the negative indications that might play out with this is that there might be a lack of consistency with her partner, and how it relates to her ability to manage her responsibilities on her path. To meet the responsibilities in her marriage or on her path, and how she approaches meeting one's responsibilities. So difficulties with meeting one's responsibilities could be reflective of the marital partner, and there could be a lack of consistency there with the marital partner. Mars here, we see that Mars is exalted. It's in Avrita of Ashta. It rules here both the 10th house, and it also rules the 5th house. Okay, and so what can we say here? And we see here that Mars, it is exalted. The Mars is getting planetarily aspected by the moon to 8 points, Mercury to 3 points, Jupiter to 48 points. It's getting more help, more positive points than negative points. And we see here that it's getting helped by the sun, and it's getting helped by the moon in Logitati of Ashtas, and getting hurt by Mercury. And so there's a lot of positivity on this Mars, though it is with Saturn, and but it is exalted in Saturn's sign, in the sign of Capricorn. So what can we say here? Mars is our capacity to fight the good fight, to stand up for what we believe in, our capacity to be logical, on our path, and to know what is worth fighting for. And the Mars being here in the 7th house would speak to the marital partner playing a huge role on how the world, the impact that she has on the world, with it being the ruler of the 10th house. So, other people, the 10th house ruling how she impacts the world. Perhaps she had a lot of great impact on the world through her marriage partner. And it is also the activation point of the Navamsha. And planets influencing this house strongly color the Navamsha with their natural indications. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider here with this Mars. It's also the ruler of the 5th house. So there could be a lot of creativity, and there could be, the ability to successfully manage the life or the marriage, the ability to make positive changes and to learn and grow within one's life or marriage. and what the marriage can creatively produce in the world. So perhaps her marriage was able to, her marital partner was help her to be very creative within the world and to produce a lot of creative things within the world, which made a greater impact in the world. You know, she was married to a very influential person named Joe DiMaggio, and you know, Joe DiMaggio was a figure in and of himself. You know that you know, he was his own person, and she also had the critical acclaim in Marriage to Arthur Miller, and um, and this was also an important impact on the world around her, and of the creative impact as well that this marital partner had for her. So this is how we can tie this in together. And this Mars here is getting hurt by Mercury. So Mars is about action, taking action, and this Mercury can make a person overthink things, worry too much, and can cause issues with taking that appropriate action in the world. So that's how that Mercury can hurt the Mars. And this is all pertaining to her marriage or her path, her dharmic path. And Saturn, let's look at Saturn here. Saturn is the ruler of both the 7th and the 8th house. Saturn is here in its own home, which is in good dignity, and it's in a Yuva Vashta. Saturn is getting planetarily aspected by the moon, by Mercury, by Jupiter. It's getting more help here than hurt by this Jupiter and also this Mercury. And we see that the Saturn is getting hurt through Lagitati Vashtas by the Sun, by the Moon, and by Mars. But it is getting helped by Mercury and by Venus. So we could say here, we can analyze here with the 8th house ruler being in the 7th, that there's a lot of transformation, a lot of sudden breaks and changes with relation to her marital partner, in relation to the people that walk alongside her on her dharmic path. There's a lot of sudden breaks and changes, a lot of transformation, but this is you know, and Saturn being here in the 7th house can cause some sorrow, some difficulty, because that's what Saturn is. Saturn is a malefic planet, and it is the ruler of the 7th and the 8th house. So it is speaking to there might be some difficulties related to these houses, and there being a lot of sudden breaks and changes and transformation that occurs. But this Saturn is able to endure the difficulties. She's able to endure. She's able to, you know, dust herself off and try again, and that speaks to her multiple marriages. And the Saturn here, you know, it is getting more helped from planetary aspects, though it is getting some hurt here. So there is kind of a mixed bag here, but I think overall that the Saturn is strong, and it's in the 7th house. It's got Digbala, and it's in its own home. So there's a lot of strength here to the Saturn, though it has some enemies that are impacting it. This Mars here. So this Saturn-Mars combination, Saturn-Mars-Sun, that is a Lagita Vashta, which is an ashamed Avashta, but it's not in her 5th house, it's in her 7th house. But this Saturn-Mars in particular can cause a lot of friction and frustration in her marriage. You know, Saturn is a slow-moving planet. It's about our reality principle, you know, and Mars is about our ideals, and it's a more faster-moving planet. So when you mix these two together, it can cause a lot of frustration with the partner, with the marital partner, causing perhaps, you know, a lot of challenges in her marriages, you know, related to her life path, her dharmic path. So this is kind of how we can analyze the Navamsha chart and really kind of look at the indications that are present here. And we see here, we can also consider the dignity, how it changes. Like for example, Venus is in friendly dignity in the Rashi chart, and in the main Navamsha chart, it goes into friendly. It's also in friendly dignity. So this Venus is kind of consistent in its dignity there. But we could see, for example, Saturn. Saturn is in great enemy dignity in the Rashi, and goes into its own home. So it picks up strength here in the Navamsha. So her capacity to endure the hardships, the ups and downs, might prove to be better for her in this regard. And then we can also look at the placement here. We see that we see here, for example, that the sun, for example, it's in the sign of Gemini, and it moves into Capricorn, and that's 8 placements away. So we could see that the sun going 8 places away, for example, can show that the sun, there's a lot of sudden breaks and changes and transformation with her sun, with her inspiration, with her sense of with her sense of authority and power. So it could take a lot of sudden breaks or changes and transformation as well. So these are some things that we can look at to kind of compare the Rashi with the Navamsha and see how the tree gets impacted. You know, the Rashi chart, as we kind of talked about before, the Rashi chart being the tree and the Navamsha chart being the fruits of that tree. You know, the tree itself can be strong, can be tall, but the fruits of that tree could be very sour and bitter. Or we can have the reverse. We can have a scrawny, small tree, but it produces really delicious fruit. So that's how we can look at the Rashi and the Navamsha. We can compare and see the true dignity of the planets and what that would mean for the person on a more deeper spiritual, psychological, emotional level, their inner self, and how this might speak to how it plays out on their dharmic path or in their marriage, whatever it is that they feel devoted and committed to. So I hope that you've enjoyed this analysis and this deeper look into the Navamsha chart. And I so thank you for watching today. Thank you so much.